Welcome to the CoStar News Hotels podcast. I'm Natalie Harms, reporter for CoStar News, and today my guest on the show is Max Spangler, Vice President of Technology at hospitality management company Charlestowne Hotels. Max, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Natalie.
So, I'm fresh off the high tech conference in San Antonio, where I'm sure, as you can imagine, the topic of conversation was all about artificial intelligence and how it's affecting the different corners of the hospitality industry. So, today I'm interested in talking to you about the impact on management company, like your management company's side of things, as well
hmm
as, how you're meeting owners and guest expectations and demands. So, just to start, can you tell me a little bit about Charlestown and where you're at in terms of adopting this new technology?
Sure, happy to. Yeah, and we intentionally did not attend high tech this year. The AI echo chamber, I think, for us was just going to be a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So we decided this year to take a step back. We had our internal conference for Charlestowne Hotels right along the same time as high tech. So to some degree, that's also part of the reason why we didn't
Hmm.
attend. But nonetheless, it just was the AI hype echo chamber was at an all time high. And so we're trying to cut through some of the noise with how we're looking at AI adoption right
Hmm.
now. But Charlestown Hotels, we've been in business for 40 plus years. We're a third party hotel operator of hotels and restaurants across the US. We focus mostly on upscale, upper upscale, and luxury boutique hotels, normally less than 150 keys. Normally have robust F&B and a strong independent brand that really speaks to the local community that the hotel is a part of. And obviously, a part of that being a luxury or upper upscale boutique independent hotel, you get to be very flexible with technology. And part of that obviously leads into what we're talking about today, which is artificial intelligence. So for us, our journey has largely been practical from the beginning, right? We're not treating it as a buzzword. We're not trying to turn everyone into an AI expert overnight. We're just trying to cut through the noise and focus where AI can actually help our teams work smarter. And the way I framed it at our conference that we held in May was that most of what people hear about AI right now is either too broad or too vague. The useful version is actually much more specific. And it helps with the first version of work drafting, summarizing, comparing, rewriting, organizing, analyzing, and getting unstuck. And that's what we constantly are telling our team members because for a lot of people, and I think for most hoteliers, they know their team members really span the technical gamut. You have some people who are very technical, very comfortable with technology. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have people who struggle sometimes with signing into email. And so trying to explain the utility usage and game changing paradigm that AI is to this entire spectrum can be a very difficult challenge, right?
Hmm.
Um, so for us, the way we're framing it to our teams is AI is really great at the first 80%. Our teams own the last 20%. And that last 20% is where our hospitality teams live. That's the judgment, it's the tone, it's the context, it's the guest sensitivity, it's the owner expectations, it's things like compliance, and then, of course, our hotel's reputation. And so for us, we're already seeing very meaningful adoption. In the last 90 days, 350 people in our company, including our properties and our corporate HQ, used AI tools daily across the entire org. That tells us it's not just a corporate pilot or a technology experiment. Our property teams are finding practical value in it. And the part that really delighted me the most was that in a lot of cases, the property teams were out using the corporate office. In a lot of cases for a company like Charlestown, you would expect this to be an IT mandate pushed down from the corporate office. When in reality, our property teams understand the value, they're seeing the value, and they're jumping at the opportunity. And
Hmm.
that leads to two tracks, Natalie. So for us, we're using AI in everyday work, so email, content analysis, summaries, the things that I mentioned. Second, we're using AI to help us build internal tools where the right solution does not exist for our business. So that means building bespoke software where maybe it would have been too expensive or too large a lift for us to undertake previously. So I'd say our journey right now, it's measured, it's practical, and it's already underway. And again, going back to the high tech comment, excuse me, we're trying not to be loud about AI. We're just trying to be good at it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's such a great point the AI echo chamber, and it's like really easy for these people, especially at conferences. I hate to pick on them, but like, to get swept up in the future of AI and all of these really cool, really complex uses that aren't happening and aren't really useful to talk about because, it's too far down the road for whatever reason. So I guess, it's great to hear how much you're using it already and on property and in corporate office. So I guess, can you give me a pulse check on the wider industry? You obviously have Charlestown as an example, but, is a lot happening kind of across the board, or is it still kind of being implemented slowly but surely?
No, I mean, I would say in our reputation, hospitality certainly has this knack that we tend to be late adopters. And I will say, based on what we saw from last year's high tech and this year's high tech, there is a tremendous amount of excitement and there is a tremendous amount of money flowing into whether it's AI venture or AI companies or startups or in third party hotel companies like us, where we're being asked by owners or we're seeing it from the guests. They're wanting this capability to be layered in, whether it's from an efficiency standpoint or we're seeing pressure on margins in a whole lot of different areas. So a lot of us are looking to AI technology to try to see if there is an opportunity for us to leverage that to drive additional value. You know, it, a lot of people are talking about agentic tools, MCP, Model Context Protocol, A2A, agent to agent commerce. Those things are absolutely coming. They're not uniform standards across not only our industry, but the wider technology landscape. MCP, as an example, developed by Anthropic. A2A, obviously developed by Google for their Gemini and Vertex platform. So there is still it is still very much like the Wild West, and we expect that to continue certainly for at least the next couple years. And with some of these larger AI companies potentially IPOing, that obviously introduces a whole host of other things. Like, are we going to start seeing ads in ChatGPT? How are they going to monetize some of these AI companies that, quite honestly, have sky high evaluations? Right. So even things like AI search, as an example, no one's got it figured out, but everyone's starting companies trying to help hoteliers and people outside of our industry figure out, well, how does my product, how does my brand, how does my company get discovered on AI search? And no one has it really figured out, but there are a lot of people trying. And so for us, my task really is just to be a great filter, right? A lot of stuff gets thrown my way. Companies are mushrooming by the day that, are guest or hotel operating systems. And it's my job, obviously, as the representative for the technology discipline at Charlestown, to look at our owners and then obviously our guests downstream and say, is this the right tool to plug in at that point? And quite honestly, I think while a lot of people may believe they could be left behind if they wait, I would just say you need to be strategic, take a deep breath, pause, and really look at what's coming at you. And hopefully, you have someone on your team that can help you from a technology perspective evaluate whether or not these opportunities are real or more like vaporware.
Yeah. I think one way that's been really helpful for me to look at AI and hospitality is like two buckets. Like we have the back end, the way hoteliers are using it to enhance, their operations, but then there's the consumer side and these agentic chatbots and everything that is a very big talking point too, because these are the people that are trying to find hotels. How do we, you know put the right hotel in front of them. So I guess from that perspective, let's talk about the owner side, the guest side,
Mhm.
because third party hotel managers are like the middleman between these each sides of these. So I wonder, let's start on the owner side. What are owners' expectations for AI? At the end of the day, they're the one writing the checks. So are they putting their money where their mouth is?
Yeah, I mean, owners obviously they attend high tech. They're obviously on LinkedIn, and so they hear efficiency, automation, better revenue, better forecasting, lower friction. And they believe that all those things can become true with, a simple chat, Claude, Gemini sub. And those are all valid areas of opportunity. But I think the misunderstanding is that it is, something that you just plug in and immediately get transformation in your business. And that's not what we're seeing at Charleston. And that's not what we're seeing across the industry writ large. The reality is that AI absolutely amplifies the systems, process, data, and people that you already have. If those fundamentals are strong, AI can absolutely help you move faster. However, if they're messy, AI just creates faster confusion. I mean, that's especially true if your data is siloed, if it's not labeled correctly. And again, this depends on the tool that you're applying and the outcome you're trying to drive. But if the fundamentals are broken, AI isn't going to help you. It's just going to accelerate a lot of confusion, and you're probably going to incinerate a lot of money as a result of it. So ultimately, what I wish owners knew is that some of the most valuable AI use cases aren't flashy. They're just practical and operational. That's what we're applying at CH. So I mentioned at the beginning of the call, but simple things like drafting updates, summarizing reviews, organizing, those are the things that just help property teams move faster through repetitive work. And by doing that, by removing the repetitive nature of work for our front desk teams, our housekeeping teams, any discipline within the company, not only at the property, but at the corporate office, you free them up to really focus on the work that actually has a lot of value and can drive better margins. So I think the best example for us, Natalie, is I mentioned at the beginning that we have two tracks. So one is using AI tools in everyday work. That's obviously a no-brainer. A lot of companies are doing that. The other part is using AI to help us build custom bespoke solutions. So that isn't to say that we're going to stop buying software on market. I mean, there's the word the SaaS apocalypse has been thrown around because people are vibe coding all sorts of solutions 24/7, 365. But for us, we did take the opportunity with some of these AI tools, and we do have myself and a lean team behind me with a technical background. We did take a moment to say, with this opportunity, are there things that we can do? Can we add a new capability in our arsenal where maybe it didn't exist before? So a really good example is a platform we built called Reserve Queue. It's just a hotel wait list. So think Resi, but for hotels. It captures demand that may have otherwise gone to another channel when a hotel's sold out. It's been live for a little over 6 months now across 30 of our hotels. We've got over 3,000 waitlist enrollees, 9% waitlist to booking conversion, and over 300K in revenue. And that's something that we just wouldn't have had the time, bandwidth, or energy to build without some of these AI tools in the past. Now, a lean technology team that knows what the problem is can apply some of these tools and build something, iterate on something much faster than they ever could have before. And so that's a great thing that I would say not every hotel management company has the ability to do that. But when owners are looking at management companies saying, "What are you doing with AI?" For us, it's like that's one of the avenues that we're most proud to promote. We know the pain points for our properties. We know them the best, so we don't need to go to market and have someone pay someone else a premium to solve it for us. With these tools, we can solve it ourselves much more effectively, much quicker, and often much cheaper.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great example of kind of using AI, building upon an existing team and to kind of improve efficiency. Um, something, just wondering from again those conversations with owners, because there's that other side of the other bucket of travelers more frequently booking their trips or at least researching their trips using AI. Are they freaking out about that? I know that's almost like a marketing side of
Yeah.
the equation, but like are owners having, that understanding and how are they regarding the opportunities there?
Yeah, AI search. There's not a single owner's call or sort of end of month report that isn't sent where that isn't a topic. Um, Yeah, like the discovery side is absolutely being upended. From a tracking standpoint, we're not seeing a huge amount shifting from traditional SEO into AEO or GEO, but we are certainly starting to see it climb. And I think part of that, I do think the AEO GEO portion is a little bit understated, mostly because the reporting isn't quite there to capture the sort of the full end to end search. As an example, we do know people are, going into chat or Claude or Gemini and asking about, what's the best hotel, what's a cool, unique hotel that maybe I wouldn't otherwise know about in X market. It'll give you results, but then they're taking those results, plugging them into Google. And so that disconnect in the reporting exists. So that's a part that absolutely needs to be solved so you understand how those connect. And as Google AI Overview and some of the other tools evolve, I'm sure we'll start to see that reporting bridge. But nonetheless, our marketing team is absolutely laser like focused on the things that can improve AI driven search. So, how often we're found and recommended by the LLMs. And really, that means better FAQs, stronger schema. So that's basically how your website is built. AI visibility tracking and reporting. Obviously, that's a part that's still ongoing. Cleaner at a glance property information is another good one that we found gives strong results and gives our properties a bump in LLM driven search. And ultimately, you do have to look at Google and some of the other main players that drive search to see what their recommendations are. And what they're saying is that it's still basically just good SEO. If you have your SEO dialed and just layer in these AI driven tactics, you're going to be doing essentially best practices. And so our marketing team is focused on that. They're watching the tea leaves, so to speak, 24/7, 365 to see what, if anything, we need to do to adjust our tactics. And to go back to your original point, those are the things that we're talking to owners about all the time, because they want to know, they want to make sure that, when people are searching for the best hotel in Aspen, or, a lot of these tertiary and seasonal markets that our hotels are in, their asset is showing up where they expect it to, which for us is number one. And that's what we're delivering on.
Yeah. I know when early conversations about, GEO and kind of what to expect from that, it was like, "Oh, no, we just learned SEO, and now we gotta learn this whole other GEO side of things," and, now so it's good to know that there's at least some overlap, like, it's not having to learn a whole new side of internet marketing, but I guess okay, so that is kind of on the guest side already, but, what about, what other expectations and demands do guests have, regarding AI, but also maybe more broadly on technology, as it pertains to hotels?
Yeah, I mean, guests expect speed, personalization, and convenience. And we've been talking about personalization in hotels for a long time. But I can tell you, and you've probably experienced this, Natalie, when you stay at a hotel that you've stayed at before, you'll be asked if this is your first time staying with the hotel. And if something as fundamental as like a repeat stay is being missed for a lot of hotels, I think it's a big issue for obviously layering in some of these additional more sophisticated tools like AI. For us, we just have to be careful. And I look at this through the Charlestown lens because we focus mostly on independent hotels, and those aren't chosen for automatic or generic feelings, right? Our guests want authenticity, they want a sense of place, they want thoughtful service, and they want to feel like a hotel understands why they're there. So our focus is to remove AI friction without removing hospitality, and that's absolutely a cliche saying, but that is our focus in this instance. Because the last thing that we want is for us to sort of start to look like the average of an independent hotel. We don't want to use AI tools for copy. We don't want to use AI certainly to maybe get a first draft, but I think those of us that have worked with AI tools for long enough and have used AI to help draft messages in any capacity, you can start to see when you're receiving messages from people that have used these tools to kind of just copy and paste it, right? Unfortunately, whether it's through certain types of dashes or certain types of spacing, or even words like work stream, which is something I would never use. But if I'm drafting something, all of a sudden it's being dropped into every potential email I'm sending. You start to see that, and I think hotels need to be careful because guests are being able to pick up on that as well. That's especially true on the image side, right? AI imagery, Google's Nano Banana Pro, absolutely incredible in terms of what it can deliver from an AI image generation perspective, but it's still not quite there. And I think guests are absolutely being sensitive, not only because they want to make sure the experience that is being promised will actually be delivered once they get there. But then also, obviously, I think over time, certainly it is now, but we'll continue to see it. There's a lot of potential political issues with over leveraging AI, whether it's because of what's happening with data centers right now, or sustainability, water consumption, power and utility bills going up. I think there's the great automation efficiency and new skills that can be leveraged because of AI. But then there's also the things happening in the orbit of all these AI conversations that hoteliers that may be promoting a sense of self or sustainability or other elements that might be contrary to some of the things happening with AI conversations. So I think it's really just important to be intentional and to know your audience, quite honestly.
Mhm. It's such a great point, and I'm glad you made it about this, you know, consumers are able to recognize AI. We're getting more and more used to it. And what does it mean if, a guest kind of catches on to this use? Like, does it give them a little bit of an ick when we talk about how important humans are to hospitality? So it's a great point that
It
you
gives them
don't,
an ick for sure. It
yeah,
gives me an ick. It feels lazy, right? It feels like
yeah.
when I get an email that I know really probably hasn't been proofed and was just sent to me back, um, I have zero interest in reading it, and I have far less interest in collaborating because um, I know that it really hasn't been read, digested, and sent back to me intentionally by a person, and I think that's true broadly across business, especially hotels, where again, for us, the market that we focus on, it's about having a sense of place in the markets where we stay. So in some ways, it's very contrary to that.
Yeah, so using AI in an intentional way hopefully will prevent that from happening. um, Okay, so you know, one thing I wanted to talk about. I mean, obviously, Charlestown is using AI daily, as you mentioned, but I do feel like more broadly speaking, we're seeing more use in AI in hotels and hospitality companies. So, why is this happening now? I mean, we've been talking about it for years. AI isn't new. But and the conversation continues to develop, but action's happening. So why now?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of many different factors. I mean, one, the models are so much more capable, right? And, every 2 to 3 months, one of the frontier companies, whether it's Anthropic or OpenAI or Google or some of the other open source models, are releasing a new frontier model that just leapfrogs the next. And so the capability of these models continues to be incredibly impressive. Not only that, they're multimodal, meaning that, whether it's with text or speech or image or video, their capabilities are in just about every domain now. So as before, if you go back 4 or 5 years ago, the time it took for you to get to a reasonably competent draft took some work, right? I mean, there was the whole thing with prompt engineering and prompt engineers. Like, that largely has kind of faded to some degree into the background. And now, really, if you tell it what you want, with again sufficient guardrails and being intentional, more detail does help. Obviously, you do get an incredibly impressive result generally. So I think a large part of it is the capability, and then it does go back to the owner question. People are spending a lot of time, too much time on LinkedIn and other areas. And so, the hype machine of AI, both from a, evaluation, equity, business opportunity standpoint, people, whether it's true or not, feel like they're going to get left behind, and they're not. Um, but I think a lot of that is driving this almost anxiety with just about, I think, every facet of society right now. And even for us, working with the executive team, we're all kind of, everyone's just so worked up into this AI hype echo chamber. It's honestly quite exhausting. And so for us, we do try to be very intentional, like take a step back, let's evaluate forest for the trees and see where we are. Um, but that doesn't stop that doesn't stop the train from marching right down the tracks. Uh, yeah, I think, in part it's like, obviously you've got the macroeconomic conditions that are pushing it, but then you do also have the reality that these models are just so compelling now.
Mhm. Yeah. I might never get sick of talking about AI. I don't know. Some days I'm like, wow, it's a lot of AI right now. But I do think it's really interesting, everyone's different kind of perspectives on it. And to see it really kind of happening now too, I think is pretty validating after so much talk.
For sure.
But we have talked about AI a lot, so we are going to pivot slightly to something that's not unrelated. But cybersecurity. So, how has cybersecurity for the hotel industry evolved recently, especially with the advancement of technology? I feel like it's a double edged sword. There's more threats, but there's more opportunity for protection with this new technology. So, uh, you know, what's that evolution been like?
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of an arms race, right? And this has to some degree always been true with technology, but AI certainly has accelerated us down this path. Um, it's raising the stakes because if we just take one example, although it really can be broadened out to several, but if you just take phishing emails as an example, the old warning signs are completely disappearing. So we used to tell people, and we still train our teams on this, although we're having to train them a little bit differently now. We're modifying our training as a result for people to look for bad grammar, strange wording, typos, obvious red flags in phishing emails, right? That advice isn't enough anymore because just like someone on my team drops a prompt into one of these models to draft an email, and AI is and a bad threat actor is absolutely doing the same thing to draft a phishing email that's clean, polished, on brand, completely believable, and probably, if they're sophisticated enough, have used the AI model to do some intel gathering on our business so they know, you know, who are the key stakeholders in this department at this property? Who do they report to? What's additional information that may be like a fact sheet for the hotel that wouldn't otherwise be easy to compile? And so that same technology that's helping us draft better emails also absolutely helps attackers draft better scams. So phishing, what we've seen on the phishing side is they're incredibly more sophisticated. And then on the next layer, you have the impersonation piece. So deep fakes have been around for a while now, especially now that voice and video have gotten so much more sophisticated and so easy to automate and very cost effective. So if you're using something like an 11 Labs, it takes maybe 30 seconds, a 30-second sample of my voice to basically forever and onward to be able to draft something in my voice tone, inflection, and syntax. And that's for less than $20 a month. So imagine what a group of threat actors can do with that type of technology. Video is still coming. It's not quite there, and it can be expensive, especially if you're doing it depending on the length of the video. But combining those three elements together is creating a social engineering nightmare for our teams. So think about it from the perspective of someone doing a deep fake from someone at the corporate team or a vendor or a guest to a property. Um, we have to train on behavior now. We can no longer train on teams being able to identify these threats visually. Those old markers generally are completely gone. And so now, if something touches money, credentials, payment changes, gift cards, or if it's urgent, we make sure our teams verify the authenticity of the request out of band, meaning you actually need to contact that person through a known pre-existing means of communication to verify they are who they say they are, and that slows a lot of things down naturally. But it's the only way that you can be sure you're actually these days working with the person who they say they are. Now, a lot of this isn't like fear mongering, and the deep fake piece still isn't quite here right now, but it's absolutely coming. The phishing side, we've already had to completely change how we look at this. There are some signals like the domain that still can't be easily spoofed, but from an email content and body perspective, those old markers are gone, and now it's about making sure our team, from a behavioral standpoint, know what the process should be. From a new vendor requesting payment, a guest requesting booking information. It's so much more process driven than it has been in the past.
Mhm. Yeah, I know you said it's not fear-mongering, but it is really terrifying to hear some of, like, how advanced it is, and it's like it goes back to what we were talking about with, like, the guests being able to recognize AI and getting the ick. I hope as a society we're learning as this technology develops, uh, kind of learning on the fly these how to recognize phishing or scams, and it's hard to keep up with, so,
It's Yeah, I mean, we just, for us, we're not a big company, we're not a small company, but we expend a tremendous amount of resources, time, and process to make sure that we have a very sophisticated training operation for all things cyber. So, as
mhm,
an example, a front desk person can't be turned loose, so to speak, from their training program until they've finished what we call our foundation series. And part of that foundation series for training covers things like deepfakes, cyber, social engineering, because it's so serious. Because if what we've seen, and this predates me, but you have a night auditor who doesn't know anyone from anybody. They're on the phone with someone during the overnight shift. They don't really have anyone on site to check, a decision, and bad things happen quickly. So training absolutely is our bread and butter, and then you do layer in additional sophisticated tools that are looking at email patterns to potentially quarantine an email as it comes in. But again, It is an arms race. For every tool
Mhm.
we put in, the threat actors are looking at that and trying to race past it.
Yeah. Well, that is a great segue into kind of this last wrap up question, which is how do you stay one step ahead? Or how do you try and keep up with all of this rapid development of technology? What's kind of the best practices?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I have to boil it down, and this is true for me personally, it's true for the people on my team. I know it's true for our executive team. It's just we stay ahead by being curious. That means giving teams approved tools, clear guardrails, and just practical support. Um, we do have to make sure our teams are using approved tools for company work, not putting guest data, payment information, confidential information into public AI tools. And even in approved tools, we have some pretty specific guardrails. We still are trying to straddle the sort of Zuckerberg move fast and break things with also like trying to be a sophisticated corporate operator. We want to innovate, but also we want to innovate responsibly. So we're trying to straddle those two paradigms. But it also means building the skill across the company, right? Like I mentioned, that spectrum of users that we have at our company, some very sophisticated, they absolutely are believers when it comes to the utility and power of AI. And then you've got the other side, right? And so how do we really bridge that gap so that everyone's marching towards the same goal, same vision with technology? And try AI is too vague. So for us, the better ask is pick one repetitive or annoying part of your job, run it through the approved model, edit the first pass before it goes anywhere. And that's how people build better judgment. And we tell people the tool gives you the first pass, you own the final version. You own what you send. There's no excuse after you send it that like, hey, this is what the AI put in. No, you synthesize the result, we hope. You put it into the body of an email or a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint presentation and you sent it. So while the tools are incredibly powerful, there's no excuse for sending something that was half baked or maybe not what you intended because an AI tool gave it to you. So, to that end, we provide scaffolding around behavior, prompt library, ready-made agents. We're a Google customer, so that ready-made agents means the Google Gem platform, a help channel, and short recurring education. So, similar to what we do with cyber, we also do with AI. We can't just tell people to use AI and leave them on their own. We have to help them get good at it.
Yeah. Start somewhere and stay curious, I think is a
Yeah,
great way to end this and a thought to leave listeners with. So thanks again for joining me on this episode, Max. It was great to chat with you about this. I think we could probably go another 30 minutes if we
for
if we
sure,
wanted to.
definitely.
The marquee gathering of the industry's data community is almost here. Join us August 5th through 7th in Nashville for the 18th annual Hotel Data Conference. With a unique mix of attendees, impactful networking, and practical best practices you can put to work immediately, HDC is where data turns into decisions. Visit hoteldataconference.com to view the 2026 lineup and secure your spot today.
This episode of the CoStar News Hotels podcast was recorded on July 2nd, 2026, and was edited by me, Natalie Harms. Find all hotel industry news at costar.com/hotel news. Subscribe to this and all CoStar News Hotels podcasts wherever you like to listen.